Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining today for our virtual summit presentation. My name is Jen O'Brien. I work with Hawks Learning, and I am the Strategic Solutions and Learning Manager here. Today, our presentation is going to focus on how you can customize your Hawks course. And by the nature of that, it means everything we're covering is completely optional, but you'll have a lot of good ideas that we're going to cover today that will help you tweak your course to fit your specific class needs. So regarding what specifics we're going to go through in terms of how you can customize that course, we're going to start off by talking about curriculum and assignment settings. So one nice thing about Hawks, if you are new to learning about our materials, is that we have a lot of pre-created assignments for you. However, you can go in and make a lot of changes. So I'm going to touch on what those changes are. You can also build your own content. So we'll be talking about our question builder tool, and that can be added to those existing assignments. You can also edit how things look when it comes to the student perspective, and that's through the student to-do list. And lastly, I'll talk about some grading customization options through LMS Syncing. So getting started, talking about curriculums and editing the existing Hawks content. Now at Hawks, we have these pre-created learning modules available for every single section or lesson that is in our textbooks. So if you look at chapter 1, lesson 1 of whatever title you're using or looking to use, you can assign just by putting in a due date or assigning without a due date a corresponding learn, practice, and certify assignment. And you actually have customization options to edit the content and add content into each one of these modes. So that's what we'll be focusing on here first. You have some options under curriculum. So if you currently do have a Hawks instructor account, you can locate curriculum under the assignments tab, and then you click the curriculum link. I will be jumping into a live gradebook momentarily to show you this as well, but I thought this would be a good place to start. Just highlight a few commonly used customization options. So the first red box you see here, this is what we call our require practice feature. This allows you to require for students to work through a % of the practice questions before they can access certify or after several unsuccessful attempts to certify. So our best practice suggestion for this would be, if you do use this feature, set it to 1 or 2 attempts. What that means is a student would be allowed to go into one of these assigned lessons, and before they spend time in practice, if they feel comfortable and confident in the material, putting a 1 or 2 into this box, where my mouse is right now, would mean the student could go straight into certify if they do feel comfortable with the material. If that student is then successful and is able to master on their first or second go, then they're good to go. They get credit for the assignment and move on. However, if a student's not successful after that first or second attempt, this gives them that opportunity or really requires them to go back and work through a % of the practice problems, and you set what that % is. This is a way to give your students some of those study skills that they might be lacking in terms of, how can I succeed in this assignment? Okay, I'm going to do better if I spend a little time practicing and practice before certify. One thing to note, so this is not essentially duplicating the homework assignment. The student's still just getting credit and required to reach a minimum grade in certify. That's because in certify, we remove learning aids, and that's where students demonstrate their proficiency. But we are asking is simply that they're working through a % of practice. So it's okay if they're getting some wrong, getting some questions right. We're not asking for a certain grade. We just want them to get in that best habit of working through those questions and benefiting from the feedback, error-specific feedback, and interactive tutoring that we do provide them in practice. Then at the bottom, you'll see 2 features. Now, if you do currently have a Hawks account, you may not see these right now if you log into your account. However, they are currently available. So after I explain these, if you're interested in either of these, please let your Hawks training rep know. We can very easily turn this on for your specific school. And if you aren't sure who your training rep is, you probably have heard lots of them, especially recently, but you can always email training@hawkslearning.com. This reminds me, I'm going to just make a quick mention. If you have any questions as I'm going through the presentation today, please do type it in. You should see at the bottom of the screen, there's a question and answer box. And I should have plenty of time at the end here to take a look at that and answer and address any questions that you have. So the second to last red box here, I'll use my mouse to highlight that here, allows students to review certify attempts. Again, brand new, we can turn it on for you if you're interested. This simply means that once a student completes a certify attempt, they'll have the ability to review that attempt. And it's up to you if that means they can review any attempt they've ever made on every assignment, or if you only want them to see the most recent 1, 2, or more attempts on each certify assignment. Just so you know, as an instructor, you already have this ability to review any attempt for a student. So this would be through our reporting options, including all student scores and assignment reviewer. And if you are interested in learning more about our reports, we did have a comprehensive webinar to take a deeper dive into those reporting. So please feel free to take a look at that. And then tomorrow, I will be covering some reports in my webinar focusing on how to change or make some changes to your course for an online setting. At the very bottom, you'll see the option to allow students to take adaptive practice sessions. Now, for those of you who are already familiar with Hawks, you might know already that Hawks is inherently adaptive in terms of if a student goes in to certify and they do not successfully reach that mastery level, we automatically take them out of certify, place them back into practice, where we give them a customized set of practice questions based on what they got wrong in certify. So we are giving that adaptive remediation to each student in between certify attempts by default currently for everyone. This option would make each initial practice session inherently adaptive as well. So this is something that's in beta. We've had some schools piloting this feature starting last semester in the fall. And we didn't have a ton of students, but we did have several hundred students as part of that pilot. And we are hoping to get more on board, even if you start here in the middle of the spring term. So please do keep that in mind. But basically, as a company, we have been collecting an enormous amount of data over the years, taking a look at every student, the questions they're answering right and wrong in practice, how that reflects in their performance in certify. And more recently, we took all that data and were able to analyze it and come up with an algorithm, with the goal being, let's present questions in a more effective, helpful order for each student based on what they're getting right or wrong. So again, as they're answering questions, it will adapt. We start every student off in practice with several lower level questions. We found that students were more successful when they started a practice session that way. And then based on what they're getting right or wrong, we take a look at difficulty level, we take a look at objectives that they're answering correct or incorrect, and then we cater the rest of that set based on their particular needs. So far, we have been really happy with the results we've seen in this beta pilot so far. So on average, students were spending around 15% less time to certify. They were missing around 13% fewer questions in certify. And they were 20% less likely to need to attempt certify multiple times in order to reach that mastery level. So we're pretty happy about that so far. What's nice about this is you can enable it just for individual sections and individual instructors. So feel free if it is something you're interested in, again, let your training and support rep know. And we can make sure to give you access to that. And then once it's out of beta, of course, it's going to show up automatically in everyone's account anyways for you to optionally turn on. Okay, so now let's take a look at some of what I just showed you in a live account. So I'm going to log in here to a demonstration account and click on that assignments tab, as I mentioned earlier, and scroll down to curriculum. I will click on my section name, and it will take me to the curriculum page where I can begin making those edits that we just looked at. So everything I just mentioned on that last slide is going to be listed here at the top of the page. But what I want to show you now that we're in an account is how you can then further customize the content. Now, if you're brand new and you have not yet created a curriculum within Hawks, please note that the first step you'll have to take is simply name your curriculum and save the changes. So mine's grayed out because I haven't made any changes to save, but in the top left-hand corner, you'll see that Save Changes option. So I will go ahead and open a lesson. It will open up into a new tab. Now, we've actually recently updated this interface, so there might be some new features you're going to learn about, even if you're pretty familiar with Hawks so far. But the way that this is going to display is it's pulling up the lesson I clicked on. So I clicked on lesson 1.2. The left-hand side is going to have our comprehensive question bank. So every question that's available to assign for this lesson. And then on the right-hand side, you see it's labeled assignment. That means this is the default set of questions that Hawks Learning has pooled as an assignable lesson for 1.2. In other words, if you're just putting in a due date for lesson 1.2, you're going to assign this content here on the right-hand side. If you're not sure how to go through and just do the basics of assigning a homework lesson, we recorded a webinar yesterday that would be really helpful. It's our Hawks 101, I think it's called Course Setup recording. And if you watch that, we'll go through some of the basics of just how to get up and running in a Hawks course, including assigning the default homework lessons. But today, we're not talking about just the default. We want to talk about how to customize that default assignment. So first thing on the left-hand side, I can very easily click on any of these blue buttons to add a question. So if there's a question I really like, I can add it. On the right-hand side, I have a remove button next to every question. I can very easily remove a question. I can do this in bulk on either side as well. So you will see I can check several boxes and click add to add multiple questions at once if I choose to do so. On the left-hand side, we have some new features that help you sort through the questions in a more effective way. So to start, you'll notice at the top here, we've labeled these columns in a sortable way. So you can sort by objective, by difficulty, and by occurrence. So if I click objective, it's going to group all like objectives. If I sort by difficulty level, so right now I've got high difficulty at the top, I can pull the low difficulty to the top. And then occurrence is nice because this means how many times do these questions on the left-hand side from our question bank appear in the actual default assignment or whatever assignment you've built. So if I want to say pull any question that is not currently assigned, I can pull those zeros to the top and add a few of those questions here. Then outside of that sort option, you do also have a search bar. So if you're looking to pull any questions that have fractions or that have the term coefficients in either the objective or the question statement, you can type that in here and it will pull those questions to the top. Same thing where, so here I've got some medium level questions, a high level. If I wanna just pull medium to the top, because the sort is gonna pull, you know, low, then medium high, or medium, sorry, or high, medium, low. If I wanna just see medium questions, I can do that by sorting them here. And now you see on the left-hand side, those are only medium questions in terms of level of difficulty. Now, another new feature that we have with this lesson builder tool is giving you the ability to pull in content from any other lesson or chapter. So again, I'm in lesson 1.2 right now, but if I use this drop down, I can very easily jump to another lesson. Let's say I want to go back to 1.1, and perhaps I want to add a few review questions to ensure as the student's progressing through the course, I want to continuously just add some of those lower level topics back in to make sure students not forgetting any key information that's important for my course. And another nice thing, so that's one use case. You could also use this tool to essentially merge lessons together. So rather than assigning 1.1 and 1.2, you can use this to pull questions from both, and that way you have one assignment covering both. The only thing to consider with that is it's not going to automatically pull the learn screens. However, we do have some workarounds through our Learn Screen Note tool that would allow you to pull some of that relevant content over. And I will cover that Learn Screen Note tool in a moment. I wanted to point out one other thing first, another new option, which is under the icon, the settings icon in the top right-hand corner. if you are a course administrator, so if you're in, if you have a Hawks account that allows you to customize and edit other instructor accounts at your school, then when you click this drop down, you would have a fourth option at the bottom, allowing you to rename a lesson. The reason only course admins or administrators currently have this option is because it is global. So if you change a lesson name, it impacts not just your sections, it would impact anyone teaching that course at that school. But it is really nice because a lot of times we see if someone is making more significant changes to the curriculum, they're usually wanting consistency across the board, across other instructors. So if you are trying to make some of those bigger edits as a school, you can use that tool. And if you're the only person in the gradebook, you are the course administrator, so you can also very easily use that tool. So let me go ahead now and open the Learn mode. And by that, I mean that Learn Screen Note tool that allows you to customize the instructional Learn content within that Learn Practice Certified Learning module. So this is going to look a lot like the student view with all the default Hawks content listed at the top of each page. The difference is from this view as an instructor, I'm able to customize the content. Now I have three options when it comes to customizing the content. First is at the bottom of the screen, I can just type any note I want. This is an important question. You might see it on an upcoming exam, or maybe if I'm right now in an online, moving to an online setting and I have the capacity to record lectures, I might want to post a link to the lecture on the first page of every Learn lesson. You can do that as well because you can add links, you can embed videos or images. It's a very flexible tool in terms of what you can post here in the note. Let's say I want to hide some content. So perhaps I'm not covering a specific objective. In that case, I could hide the entire screen. So if you're wanting to skip a question, skip an objective entirely, maybe you only cover half of the lesson content, then you can simply hide the second half of the materials. And lastly, your option is to replace. So what replace would do, it's essentially combining hide and add note. It's removing the Hawks Learn screen that we're looking at right now, and it's replacing the screen entirely with whatever you type in the bottom here as your note. So you've got those options. I did see someone raise their hand. I'm going to make sure that I address any questions you all have at the end here. I'm a little new with doing webinars via Zoom, so I don't want to accidentally mess anything up if I interrupt in the middle here. But let me jump back to this presentation and show you some examples of what Learn Screen Notes look like from the student perspective. So this one that we're looking at right now, this is a very simple example, the first one I gave, where you're just typing a note at the bottom of the screen. And as you can see here, I'm linking an honor policy, and that honor policy would be a hyperlink, so the student could click on it and go straight into it. This second example is using Google Forms. And so what's nice about this is it lets you put in an interaction. So there are a lot of great resources out there right now that are free in terms of some supplemental materials in your classroom to get students engaging with you, especially in distance learning. Google has a whole suite of options. I'm not overly familiar with how they work, but I do know that their Google Forms would allow you to build in something like what we're looking at right now. So describe what you learned from the video above. It's referencing an embedded Hawks video. And let me just take a quick look at these questions and answers in case there's something wrong with my audio here. Okay. I did have a couple of questions that I'm going to address right now just to make sure that they are taken care of. So I had a question, can you remove in bulk as well? And I'm guessing that is regarding the assignment builder when I was adding questions from the left-hand side and then removing from the right-hand side, and that is correct. You can add in bulk, you can also remove in bulk. So both the question side on the left-hand side and the actual assignment on the right-hand side have checkboxes next to every question. So when you're in curriculum and you're adding and removing questions, both of those can be done in bulk. I will make sure to send the PowerPoint out at the end. And And then I will get to some of these later. One I just saw before I closed there. I'm glad you guys are asking questions and interacting here. We do not currently have the ability to add a brand new page to the Learn screens. So our kind of workaround that I was talking about in terms of merging lessons would be one of two things. So one option would be if you're not going to use all the screens of one lesson. So if I'm merging 1.1 and 1.2, if I don't cover all of the content from 1.2, then I can replace some of those screens with the content from 1.1. Or more realistically, maybe I take over the objectives page and I make it just a lot longer, so it's more scrollable content on the first page to see content from 1.1 Learn screens, and then I see the rest of 1.2 for the remainder. And then probably one of the better options, and this is why we like to work with you all really closely if you are wanting to do a more extensive edit like this. We want to help you with this process. But the third option would be, let's take a look at the table of contents here. We do not have many schools that assign every single lesson. Most schools only assign a portion of what's covered in any title that they've adopted. So what you can do is just take over an unused lesson. So you're essentially replacing an unused lesson. If I never touch the appendix or I never touch the last 2 chapters of my materials, that's a whole lot of lessons that we have to allow you to take over all the Learn screens, pull in Learn screens from 2 other lessons, and then pull in the question bank as well. So those are a few suggestions. I'll make sure to address a few later at the end here during the question and answer session. So Google Polls, interactive, nice way to add a Learn screen note where students actually typing in. I think these types of interactions, adding them in to Learn is good, especially in the distance environment that you might find yourself in right now. And then another option, so I did mention you can type a note, you can embed an image, you can also either link out to a video or actually embed the video directly in here. We have a really handy document that covers all these different ways you can utilize Learn screen notes, including some interactive graphs through free online resources and things like that. So again, if you're interested, you can let me know in question and answer and we'll have a rep contact you afterwards, or you can reach out to your training and support rep directly and ask for that document to be sent to you. If you're familiar with our blog, we do have a really helpful search tool there. And if you just type Learn screen notes in that blog, it's also going to take you to those resources. So definitely recommend using that. It's blog.hawkslearning.com. So next I want to talk about a few more ways you can customize the content. So we already talked about adding and removing existing Hawks content. We talked about adding your own content to Learn. Now we're going to talk about adding your own questions to these assignments as well. So I will jump back into the instructor account. I will exit out of I won't save my changes since this is just for demonstration purposes. I will go back to the assignments tab and scroll down to Question Builder. So Question Builder is a question authoring tool that allows you as an instructor to build your own questions and add them to practice, certify, and any online web tests that you create. This tool can be as easy and fast to use or as involved and in depth in terms of making really robust questions with tons of feedback and different iterations as you want it to be. So you can really do some quick and easy questions to get them in there, or you can spend some time developing really involved questions to help your students. As you might imagine, when Hawks is adding questions, we take the latter route. We make sure we're adding in explain error feedback, step-by-step tutoring, instruction, all kinds of things. And the nice thing is we use this exact same tool that we give to you as an instructors to build in your own questions. So if you wanted to go the extra lengths that we do to put in questions, by all means, you are welcome to do that. So when you first open Question Builder, again, it opens in a new tab, and we're first going to prompt you to create a folder. This is going to just help you keep your questions organized. So for instance, if I just plan on adding a couple of questions to a few different chapters, I might just want to create chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3 as my folders. If I plan on really spending some time to build in questions for multiple lessons, then you might want to name your folders by lesson. So lesson 1.1, 1.2. I will go ahead and click into chapter 1, a folder. We don't have any questions in there yet, and open or click create in order to start building a question. Now, let me move this video again a little bit here. I mentioned already that you can add in lots of tutoring options here. You'll see you have that ability through adding a hint, a solution, explain error, and step-by-step. On the left-hand side, you'll see you can also easily add multiple step questions. At the top, you have your optional header. In the box right below that, you add your question. So the question the student's reading to then answer, submit their answer underneath it. So the question statement is the actual question. And before I get into showing you how to build a question, I want to take a moment to share some of your answer options. So like I said, you can make a variety of different types of questions within this tool. So I want to highlight what those are. On the right-hand side here, you'll see it says multiple choice in a drop-down box, and we're on multiple choice right now. And within multiple choice, you can make it radio buttons or checkboxes. Radio means one question is correct. Checkboxes would be the option to do a select all that apply, or if there's more than one correct answer, you would select that option. I'll keep it on radio. You'll see by default it lists 4, but you can always add more if you want more than 4 answer selections. You simply need to change one answer to correct. You'll see it auto populates the credit to 100%, and you would enter in what the answer would be here. One thing that's nice though is, let's say you're building a question and a lot of students get this question wrong, and even in a free response test or quiz, or when you're asking them in class, and they always make this one common mistake. You could easily type in what that common, what you think a lot of students might think the answer is, even though it's incorrect. Put that in as one of the answer selections, and you can add, if you click the show explain error, with multiple choice, it makes it really easy to just type in that wrong answer and then explain error why the answer was wrong. So that way, if the student selects this incorrect answer, they're going to be given specific feedback as to why that in particular is wrong and where they might have gone wrong, since you've experienced seeing this happen in your classroom. You can also put in a partial credit. So if there's an answer that's 100% correct, but then there's another answer that you're willing to give half credit or quarter credit on, you can put that in here. So that's everything I wanted to mention on multiple choice. Let's jump down to free response. So free response would more likely be for your math courses. And as you can see over here where my mouse is on the left-hand side, it actually defaults to selecting math. You can always change it to text, but this would be more, the answer is numerical. There's one main answer. Maybe you want to give some wiggle room when it comes to decimal acceptance. You can do that, or simplifying tolerance. You can always accept that as well. But if you want to, you can change this to text. That would mean the student's answer would be graded. If the answer is, I can't think of an example off the top of my head, but if it's a written example, they would have to type it in exactly as you have it. I'll click this for a moment and show you do have some flexibility in terms of, maybe I don't want it to be case sensitive. I don't want them to not get credit because they enter the answer lowercase versus uppercase. And you can also restrict the actual characters a student can enter into the box. That will help with a word-free response to kind of narrow the potential things a student can type in to get the question wrong. Maybe they type in a comma when you're wanting to just grade plain words, and that's fine. But again, free response is mostly going to be math. If you are wanting a student to be able to type in a sentence or paragraph-based answer, that's going to be open-ended. So this is because technology isn't quite there yet in an accurate enough way. This is something that we'd want you as an instructor to grade, since it is sentence and paragraph based. The student's writing something in their own words, you would read it and grade it for the students. Click to select and click to insert. That's more going to be for probably your English disciplines or psychology, maybe even economics. But for this, you essentially would type out a paragraph. So it could be an application-based question. And then and then the student would select either a word or a grouping of words, maybe a sentence, to select the answer. You'll see a lot of these already built in just through Hawks, through our Foundations of English, Composition, and Psychology materials. Click to insert. Best example I can think of here is a paragraph where we ask the student to insert the punctuation, so commas, periods, that type of thing. All right, so I'm going to go back to free response because I'm going to show you an example of how to create an algorithmically generated or a question with multiple versions for math, because it's a very simple one. I'm just going to do, number 1 plus number 2 equals number 3. So 1 plus 1 equals 2, so that you get a feeling for how this works. Because this is a math question that I will be entering, I'm going to use this expression builder. What's nice about this is I have some options here. So for instance, if I'm adding a fraction, I can click fraction and it automatically populates some of that coding that other systems might require you to know offhand if you're building in a question, a math problem, for instance. And you'll see here, this is how it looks in terms of how I typed it or coded it. And at the bottom, it shows you how that would actually display for students. Another benefit of entering your answer here through Expression Builder is this will make your question accessible for students. Meaning if you have a student who needs to use a screen reader to access the content, that screen reader would be able to read this in a mathematically correct way because you're using the proper formatting here. Okay, so one step further, I'm in Expression Builder and I want to make it algorithmically generated, so I need to use our variable manager. That's because I can't just type in 1 plus 1 equals 3 or 2. I have to create the different versions of this question so that it knows how to tie it together. So let me go ahead and click Variable Manager, and I will name this question 1. And here I have a list, a grouping of columns and rows. Now, if you wanted to, if you're doing a more advanced question, you could have a big Excel document. This is what our content folks do, and they'll program out all the different iterations and then copy and paste it back in here. You could easily do that, or you can work straight from this page. Think of every row, so row 1 through 5. These are different versions or iterations of the problem. The columns are the different variables within the problem. So for instance, when I accurately said 1 plus 1 equals 2, I would just type that in the row because I need the variable 1, variable 2, 1, and then variable 2 as the answer. And this row is that one version. So I'll type in a couple more here to prove to you I can do simple addition. And then I will show you how to populate this into the actual question. Okay, so now I've come up with a few different iterations of the problem, each of these rows. I'm going to start by inserting column 1. So it's already selected column 1 as the first variable I want to insert. Then I'm going to put a plus sign. Then I'm going to insert variable B, so column B. So variable A plus variable B, I'm going to click OK. That's now in my question statement. I can then come down here and select the variable manager again. And I've already created it, so all I have to do is select C, my answer variable, click Insert, and I've got myself a question. Just like what we did or what we saw was available with multiple choice, I can add in another text box. Let's say you find that students will typically subtract, or if I'm adding, so it's a add exponents, maybe students typically multiply or something like that. You could put in an intentionally incorrect version, so add an extra column or variable to the variable manager, and then have that wrong answer populate here as an additional option. And then you can enter in some explain error feedback. So if a student puts in this specific wrong answer, here's the feedback we want tied to it. Again, that's what we do when we build Hawks questions to make available to schools. So let me go ahead and save this question. That way you can see what it looks like. I need to name it. So I'll call this question 1, low difficulty. And once I have it saved, I can show you a quick preview of what that question looks like. So up here, if my question 1.1 equals 2, I can click New Values, and it will show me the different iterations of the question. So that is Question Builder. I believe that's everything I was going to cover there. Now that we have talked about the content within the courseware, I want to talk a little bit about some settings for assignments. So if we jump into, I'm going to show you this through our web test tool. So under assignments, I'm going to jump into web test and talk about some of those custom options when it comes to settings for an assignment. You can get creative with web tests because, you know, it really is just however you name it. If you name it as you build it the same regardless. So I just have my question bank on the left, like assignment builder, my actual assignment on the right, and then I save it and name it a quiz, it becomes a quiz. If I save it and name it as a test, it becomes a test. I could create an assignment and save it and name it practice test. If I do that, maybe I make it a prerequisite for an actual test. Maybe I make it 0 credit, or maybe I give bonus credit for it. So you have some flexible options there. Same thing if you're wanting to just make a worksheet. So sometimes instructors will just print a worksheet of practice questions for a student. But now with an online environment becoming the reality for most schools right now at the end of the semester, you might you could still do the same thing, create a worksheet, but instead of printing it for students yourself, you maybe post it under our course materials for them to print at home and work through extra practice problems. So think of web tests more as a comprehensive question bank. We give you all of our questions available in the title, and then you're just picking them and pulling them into an assignment and doing what you will with it. So let me talk through what some of those specific settings are. In terms of building a web test, that's something that we did cover in our 101 training. And of course, please know if you want training on that, just let us know and we will connect with you one-on-one and provide that training. So I'll go ahead and select a test I've already built. And then on the right-hand side, you'll see I have some options. Our general settings, those are the basic 101 setup. If you're gonna assign a test, you have to put in a general setting with a start date and time, end date and time. You can choose to password protect it, to give multiple attempts, and if so, how is it graded? You can have time restrictions, that type of thing. So that's your really basic settings. But for the customization focus today, I wanna talk about some of your other options that you may or may not have explored so far. Student settings by test. Extenuating circumstance, one time a student is unable to take an assessment, you can go in there and give that student a different start and end time, maybe a different password, whatever you want. If there's a student, you'll see at the bottom, I then have student settings by student. If you have a specific student who always needs time and a half, so rather than the 60 minutes, they're always gonna need 90 minutes on an exam, you can come in here in the student settings by student and change that for that particular student. That way it saves with them. Prerequisites. So you can, as you're creating this web test, you can make it so that in order for a student to access this web test, they must complete whichever lessons you select here. So these homework lessons, the certified lessons, are prerequisites to this web test. I can also select a whole chapter at a time if I want to do that. If I scroll down a little further, I also have the option to make any web test, so that could be a quiz or a test, as a prerequisite to the test I'm building right now. So maybe I want 2 quizzes with a minimum 80% score. That minimum is optional, but you can ask that they reach a minimum score, and that it's prerequisite. They must take tests 1 and 2, reach that minimum score, and that will open up test 3 that I'm creating right now, for instance. Now I'm showing you this within web tests, but please know that for our lesson due dates, so those Learn, Practice, Certify assignments, you have that same option. You can make any lesson or web test a prerequisite for a homework lesson. This could be useful if you are going to move to more of a self-paced environment. You could set it up so that a student must complete these 4 homework assignments before they take quiz 1. Then before they can take the next 4 homework assignments, they must finish quiz 1 and get 85%. then before they can unlock test 1, they must have completed these last four homework assignments. So you can structure it that way. I would still tend to, for an online class, and I'm mentioning that in this webinar, and I will again tomorrow in our online focus webinar, because I know this is impacting all of you right now, really. I would still probably recommend using structured due dates if you can for your homework lessons, just because that's going to help encourage your students to stay on track. You can always make it so there's no late penalty. So, it's basically just a structured guide. So this is what I should be finishing week 1, what I should be finishing week 2. And even if you have due dates, you could still use these prerequisites. And that's a way to kind of, as a stopgap, ensure the student is not just missing all their homework and only doing tests, but truly working through the content, especially if they're no longer having attendance in a lecture environment. So that is everything there. There's one last thing. Oh, I'm going to undo my changes since I'm not saving things for demonstration purposes today. But let me go back and show you one other option with the settings that I wanted to focus on, and that's the additional settings. So under additional settings, you choose when to release grades to students. You choose if and when a student can review the test. You can give full or partial or no credit for unsimplified answers. You choose how much if it's partial. Respondus lockdown browser. So you can use Respondus lockdown browser with Hawks, especially if you are having to move to an online testing environment. This could be a good option. It essentially locks it down so they can't access anything but that Hawks web test they're on. They can't open another browser, another tab, be it on it, have another website open previously to opening the web test. You can also, it makes it so they can't copy and paste in any answer. And if you're interested in this, we have really clear documents showing students and instructors how to get this set up. It would require students to download the lockdown browser on their computer. You can allow pause attempts. You can make something pass fail. If there's a pass rate, you choose, do they get full credit after that or keep the raw score? And then diagnostic. So you can make any test diagnostic. And what's nice about this is it essentially allows you to allow students to place out of any homework lessons where they've demonstrated competency. So if you're building this, we typically recommend doing it on say a per chapter level. You would build your test, and then to make a diagnostic, you simply check this box and put in a proficiency level. And what that means is when a student's taking the test, if they get 80%, in this case, since I have 80% as a proficiency, if I get 80% of the questions right from any particular lesson included on this assessment, then I automatically get credit for having completed the corresponding homework assignment. So if on this exam, there are 5 questions from lesson 1.1, and I get 4 of those 5 questions right, I reach that 80% mastery level. That means I no longer have to do lesson 1.1 from my to-do list. It shows up as done and completed. So this is a really good option if you find that a good amount of your students have prerequisite knowledge on certain subjects. Maybe you just do a diagnostic test for the first chapter or 2. And that will allow students who do have a strong foundational set of understanding of that material to accelerate through the course, or maybe just at least focus on the content that they are struggling more with. Give them a head start on the stuff they might struggle with. One other thing I wanted to mention here is we've pre-built some of these for you depending on what title you're using. So for instance, Foundations of English Foundations of English and Psychology and Economics. We have different assessments available in English composition. So we have grammar diagnostic for our English titles, our 3 different English titles. We have, for Foundations of English, we also have diagnostics for each chapter, since it's inherently more of a remedial course. That way a student can place out of topics there. For economics, we have a diagnostic assessment for our Chapter 0 math review. And this is nice because we essentially have a chapter designated to the fundamental math skills a student would need to apply to the econ topics they're learning. And then for psychology, we've created a few chapter-based diagnostics as well, in case you have a good amount of students coming in from, say, an AP psych course or something like that. So that is all I wanted to cover when it comes to web test settings. Next thing I wanted to move on to is share a little bit about the view from the student's perspective. So I'm going to jump back to the student view. See lots of great questions coming in. I haven't read them yet because I don't want to lose track here, but I promise I will get to all of them for you guys. So when a student logs into Hawks, if you are doing nothing to customize your course, you're just assigning lessons and web tests and putting in due dates or not, they're just going to show up here in chronological order. If you are using due dates, then we actually create these headers for you of overdue, due today, due within a week, and due later. So that requires no effort on your end. However, we give you the option, if you want to customize how this displays for students. So we let you create your own headers. We let you group things in whichever way you'd like to. I'll show you a couple of examples of this, and then I'll show you on the instructor side how to complete it. So an English example would be maybe you group the homework lessons by topic, grammar, diction and vocabulary, process. Maybe you also group it by essay or writing assignment topic. So maybe in a composition course, you've got 3 major writing assignments: a descriptive essay, narrative writing, and argumentative paper or something like that. You could have those groupings listed as headers on the to-do list, and then any relevant homework, Hawks homework lesson, could be pulled underneath each one. So that way, as the student is working on these assigned Learn, Practice, Certify lessons, they understand exactly what it's preparing them for. Doing this homework is preparing me for this upcoming writing assignment. And then as I'm working on it, maybe I'm understanding that developing these skills are things that will directly apply and help me with that writing assignment later. Another example would simply be grouping things into units or modules. So in several of our titles, including Foundations of English, all of our integrated review titles, math and English, those are good for a co-requisite course, and developmental math titles. So several are preparation for college math and developmental math. We have these strategies for academic success materials. They're assignable lessons in the software. They're also printed in a lot of our materials as well. If you wanted to, you could group those at the top. Maybe you want to group them and make it 0 credit, so it's just optional resource. Maybe you group it at the top and there is a weight for the material, but either way, you just want them to see it as separate from the rest of the homework assignment. You can easily do that, as you see here. And then maybe you group the rest by units or by weeks or something. And I will show you that in action, jumping back to the assignments tab and clicking on student to-do list. So from this student to-do list, I will select my section. And I've already created a couple of headers here. As you can tell, I've got a test 1 and then week 1 or test material. For instance, maybe you've got 3 tests throughout the semester and you just want the student to see at the top of the page. Every time they go to the to-do list, you want those 3 tests to be at the front and center of their mind. You could always group those at the top and then maybe break out the homework by week. So here I've got a week 1. If I want to add a new header, I simply click Add Header. I will make a week 2 header, save my changes, then drag this down below week 1. And then I've already assigned homework, so I can just pull some of those assignments up into week 2. So really easy to do. Also, kind of like how our assignment builder has a bulk option, here we've got those checkboxes as well, and you can move up here, move assignments to week 2 all at once. So it does make it pretty easy to manage and do that. So this way, a student logs in, I see my tests at the top, then I see week 1 homework, week 2 homework, and so forth. So that's really pretty straightforward there. And then you can copy to other sections if you have multiple sections that would have the same setup and structure. Now, last but not least, when it comes to what I wanted to cover, and then I can finally address those questions I've been wanting to get to for you guys, when it comes to customizing your course, there are a few grading customization options. So for that, we're going to jump away from assignments tab where we've been on this whole time, just going through customizing your assignments, and go to customizing your grading. And that is grade settings and then assignment groups. Now, by default, we give you homework, tests, and quizzes. You can click edit and delete any of these. You can click the gray new group and add any new group. If you click new group, you'll see there's a drop-down option to make it a subcategory. So that's very easy to do. But I mentioned a couple of times the ability to assign something, say a practice test or the strategies for academic success materials, as no credit. You could do that by either not including it in the grade or just simply putting in a 0 for the grade weight, which is a nice option here for you. Showing advanced options, you can also change the weight distribution, even proportional in some, and you can also keep all scores, drop the highest, or I'm sorry, keep the highest, that would not be very nice, or drop the lowest X number of assignments as well. So that gives a little bit of flexibility. If you feel like you're fielding a lot of questions, especially in an online environment, when you're used to interacting one-on-one, face-to-face with students, you're finding a lot of people are individually emailing you, hey, can I get a pass on this homework? Without getting the late penalty, because this is why I turned it in late. Please help me out with this type of thing. If you want to just give a little more leniency to the full class, you could always just drop the lowest 2 or 3 homework assignments. Alternatively, you absolutely have the ability to edit due dates for individual students if you have the time to be able to manage that. I know a lot of that just comes down in part to how many students are in your class and how much of a time commitment that may or may not be. Last thing when it comes to grading structure customization is the LMS syncing options. So some of you might be using this already, but either way, we wanted to make sure everybody's aware of what's available. That way, if you're not using it, you can connect with us and we can help you get it set up. Now, some of this is going to require your school's IT department to make sure the syncing is up and running. I know that might be challenging right now with a lot of campuses closing down. We will do everything we can on our end to get things up and running. But if you're really wanting syncing and it doesn't look like your IT department is able to help right now mid-semester, we can definitely make sure we're working with them before the following semester to get it up and running. We also have some really good options for integration that we can kind of do on our own. So just embed, put the learn.hawkslearning.com, that's a student login page, straight into your LMS. And that way students still just goes to their LMS, and then from there they can easily access Hawks. So we have a couple ideas like that to help in the meantime. We want to do whatever we can to help you all through this. So in terms of what our actual LMS syncing options are, we have single sign-on available for D2L, Canvas, and Blackboard. And then we also have deep linking and auto sync available for D2L and Canvas. Now, deep linking would be where, actually, just in case, let me start at single sign-on. So single sign-on would mean a student goes into their LMS, they click on their Hawks link, the first time they do it, automatically creates their Hawks account and gets them logged straight into Hawks. Then every other time when they click the link, same thing from their experience, just we're not building an account every time. They click on the link and then it automatically takes them into Hawks. And you can have that available to you if you're interested. Deep linking would be you are, rather than a student clicking in the LMS and opening Hawks, they actually see their individual Hawks assignments, so lesson 1.1, 1.2, and quiz number 1 listed out in their LMS, and they would click on each assignment individually, and it could either open within their LMS or open into a new tab. Auto sync, it's auto grade syncing, so it automatically pushes the grades out time of your choosing, I believe around midnight by default. And we are working on LTI 1.3 integration. Anyone who's using Moodle, that's good news for you. That means that we will have the ability to integrate with Moodle. We're still actively working on that, and we'll make sure to let you know as soon as it's available. But what's nice about the LTI 1.3 integration is it also allows us to sync with really anything that's compatible with this, which includes some more some less commonly used LMS. So it allows us to accommodate more schools in terms of helping with any of their syncing needs. Okay, the time you guys have been patiently awaiting for. This is a question and answer session. I want to go through a few of these. So we answered this question, send the PowerPoint. You know, with the PowerPoint, we will be posting the recording once it's available. And, oh no, I hope I recorded to the cloud. So if Zoom has been a little slow, if I accidentally recorded to the cloud instead of my computer, it's going to be a little bit of a delay. But as soon as our recordings are available, we are posting them on the blog. I believe we'll be emailing you all with that link. I believe I answered the replacement, add a new page in Learn Screen Notes. We have a workaround for that, but not exactly that. How did you get to the Learn Edit screen where you had the choice to replace or hide a screen? Good question. So from the assignments tab, I'll just quickly show you all this since it's easy to navigate to. So how do you get to Edit Learn Screen in the first place? It's under Assignments. You scroll down to Curriculum. Click on your section name. If you have not yet created a curriculum, you will have to name it and save it. Then when you open a lesson, you'll see in the top right-hand corner, there is a settings, a little wheel settings icon with a drop-down arrow. You'll select that drop-down arrow and it will give you, or it'll show you an option to Open Learn. Open Learn is what will take you to that page where you can hide, replace, or add a note for Learn Screens. You mentioned replace. Is there a way to add in a new page with just our own materials? So again, unfortunately, there's not a way to add in a brand new screen with your own materials, but we've gotten pretty creative with this. So again, the objectives page could be something you just take over and use this. We could also, you know, take some of the content from one of our Learn Screens, add it, replace a previous screen and add those two notes together. So now page number 2 is actually page 2 and 3 of the Hawks content. And then you've got page 3 all to yourself. It is a bit manual. You know, there's no getting around that in terms of putting in this content. But the good news is you do it once and it is good to go, not only for any sections that you teach. So I set up one time, I can use it in all my sections. You can share this with your colleagues. So if you guys want to group work and I work on chapter 1, someone else works on chapter 2, you can kind of go about it that way, or just have one person do everything and share it. So we try to make it easy with that option. Replace, how did you get to Learn Screen? You had the choice to replace or hide, I covered that. Where do you give decimal or simplified tolerance to questions provided by the default Hawks curriculum? Okay, good question. Where do you give decimal or simplified tolerance to questions provided by the default Hawks curriculum? So in the, if you are talking about the Hawks lesson, so learn, practice, and certify, if you see from this curriculums page, so assignment curriculum, I can simply check a box here next to any lesson to accept unsimplified answers as correct. Hawks by default is designed to accept any correct version of the answer. So we do try to build in some of that decimal tolerance in relevant titles such as statistics. If it's ever not the case where we are not accepting a correct version of the answer, should not happen very often, because if it does happen, if you take a screenshot or your student takes a screenshot of it marking that question wrong, you send it to us. Not only will we fix it, usually it's pretty prompt. It depends on how the question was built, about how quickly we can get it edited. But we'll also mail a $10 gift card or email a $10 Amazon gift card for having identified the mistake in the first place. So we take it seriously. We want Hawks to be inherently very tolerant for students. When it comes to how we mark a question that's unsimplified, we want to leave that up to you, and you can choose for tests and homework how those are graded. By default, we, if a student's in practice and they don't simplify, rather than just marking it wrong, we actually give them a really helpful bar that says, your answer is not simplified, please simplify and try again. Let's see, does WebTest have a lockdown feature? Yes, hopefully, I bet you asked that probably before I got to Respondus lockdown browser, so you're thinking in the right direction. That Respondus lockdown browser is what you're looking for WebTest. Can you call quizzes quizzes? Yes, you can. When you're in WebTest, your students will on their side not see something that says WebTest. They're only gonna see on their to-do list however you name it. So if you name your WebTest quiz 1, quiz 2, quiz 3, That's what the student sees. You do not have to call it a test. Is it possible to limit students to just one login? For instance, a student is logged into Hawks on their iPad and certified, but also logged into Hawks on their laptop and are in practice. Excellent question. We actually only give you the option to only let students log in one location. It's a security measure to prevent any unwanted collaboration or cheating or anything like that. So if a student's logged in and they, through another browser on the same computer or a different computer, try to log in a second time, it will log them out. So they're not able to do that. Since I import grades into D2L, when students did the grammar diagnostic test, will the passing grade in the sections they already know transfer to my, okay, let me read this one more time. Since I import Hawks grades to D2L, when the students do the grammar diagnostic test I set up, will the passing grade in the sections they already know transfer to my D2L grade book? So, that they are, so probably the lessons that they placed out of. So it should give them, so if a student takes a diagnostic assessment and they're placed out of specific lessons or sections, it should populate those grades into your D2L as having full credit completed, because the way we're grading it is they get full credit for having completed that assignment, since you're giving them credit through performance on the diagnostic assessment. So yes, that should work with D2L as well. Is the and thank you all for your time. If anyone wants to leave and not stay for question and answer, of course, you're welcome to do so. If you have any questions, you can email us at marketing@hawkslearning.com. But I do want to stay and answer a couple more questions here. Is the diagnostic test under web tests given before the students start any homework in that chapter or before the test? So the nice thing about how diagnostic test works is it's completely up to you when the student sees it. If you wanted to, you could have them work on, maybe you want them to start by doing every single strategy for academic success lesson. Then you want them to take a diagnostic before they take chapter 1 content. You can make it so the diagnostic is a required prerequisite for chapter 1, or you can make it completely optional. You don't have to take the diagnostic if you feel like you don't know the content that well. Maybe just go straight into chapter 1 homework. So if I did not address your question about diagnostic with that, let us know and we'll make sure to get back to you. But it's flexible in terms of when the student's taking the diagnostic. How do I access the recording of this Zoom session? So again, I was supposed to record this to my computer. I can't recall if I was recording to my computer or the cloud. If I record it to my computer, then it's going to post probably by the end of the day tomorrow on our blog. You should be getting an email with the link on our blog where we're actually posting all of the PowerPoints and recordings so that you can just look at this session or any other session we're hosting this week. If I accidentally recorded to the cloud, it could take a couple of days, not having to do with Hawks, but having to do with Zoom, which has been inundated with a lot of additional users due to the events that are happening right now, where a lot of classrooms are having to move offline. I know they've been generous enough to provide extended access past their basic free access to K through 12 students. I've not seen that offer extended yet for college instructors, but you still can get some good use out of Zoom with just the basic free account. I'll talk about that some more tomorrow during my online training. So long story short, we're going to get you these recordings as soon as we can, but we might be limited if I accidentally recorded to the cloud. And then, yes, the lessons they place out of. Yeah, so I think someone was clarifying my assumption earlier, which I believe was how I answered the question. So thank you all so much for not only your time, but also your participation. I really appreciate that. I know it's a hard time we're all going through right now, but if there is anything we can do to help you, please let us know. We want to be there for you and your students. So thanks. And again, if you have questions, marketing@hawkslearning.com. And I also threw out your training reps as resources as well. So please do contact us in any way, and we're happy to help. Thanks so much.